Professor Loeb, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Mark. This is my co-host.
I'm Minnie. Nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you.
Together, we run a bilingual independent channel called Interstellar Archaeology, which happens to be the name of a blog you posted back in 2022.
Well, it's my field of research, and so you forecasted that, and I can tell you more about what I think should be done in this context.
Our channel explores the mysteries of the universe, ancient civilizations, and what it means to be human. Okay, let's do something fun. We're going to ask a bunch of questions and then just say the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
So no thinking about.
Okay, first one. Are you an alien?
No. Well, my wife says if they come to pick me up because they must have left me, I should tell them. I should tell them not to ruin the loan when they take off, and also I should make sure to leave the car keys with her, not to take them with me.
If you could send a message to 3i Atlas, what would you say?
I would say, welcome to our neighborhood, peace.
If aliens invite you to visit their planet for a week, but you might not come back, would you go?
Of course. I mean, I asked this question students in my class, and what they said is that they would go as long as they can use Instagram and share the experience with their friends. And I said, why would you want to do that? Like, if you climb the Himalayas or you do some adventure, for me, the last thing I would do is to share the experience. I would just enjoy the experience. But that's the precondition they had, that they would be able to share it with their friends. Taking selfies with an alien, for them, it was the biggest thrill.
So if you really met an alien, what gift would you give them?
I wouldn't give them any gift because I'm not very proud. There was this golden record that included music and other things that we are proud of. And I think it's very childish to brag in front of an alien because we are probably not that impressive relative to what they are. So I would just watch them and try to learn from them rather than show off. I will not give them any gifts because it would look like nothing for them.
Which do you think will happen first? Proof of alien life or AI becoming conscious?
Well, that's a great question. I think there is a race between the two, and both of them are spelled AI, artificial intelligence or alien intelligence. I'm trying to promote the discovery of alien intelligence, so my hope is it will happen before AI becomes superhuman intelligence. Both of them may happen in the coming decade.
Maybe the alien life is AI also, right?
Yes, that's true. 100 years ago, there was a philosopher named Martin Buber at Princeton, and he talked about several ways that humans interact with their environment. There is a human-object interaction, there is a human-human interaction, and he added the human-God interaction. Of course, there were no computers back then, and he was not aware of a human-AI interaction that we have right now. Also, there would be AI interaction, and then there would be terrestrial AI with extraterrestrial AI.
Yeah.
And they might feel more kinship to extraterrestrial AI than to humans because maybe both of them are made of silicon. They would feel connected.
They are the siblings.
Right. If the universe could answer one question truthfully, what would you ask?
What happened before the Big Bang? Because that will teach us about our cosmic roots, but also about how to unify quantum mechanics and gravity.
Do you think aliens are already with us? Do you believe those UAP reports? Do you believe higher dimensional beings?
No, I don't believe it, but I'm leading the Galileo Project that builds observatories with the goal of getting scientific quality data that could inform us if there is anything anomalous around us.
Perfect. You passed the alien test. Officially, you're human now.
Well, I should definitely declare myself as a legal alien. I'm not an illegal alien in the United States.
So since July 1st, we began closely following the journey of 3i Atlas. I've been reading your blog almost daily. Inspired by your work, we created 3 episodes on 3i Atlas. They reached more than 22 million views. Have sparked huge discussions among our audiences. Many of them deeply admire your courage to challenge conventions and expand scientific imagination. So today, this conversation isn't just about data or discoveries, it's about curiosity and what it means for humanity to face the unknown.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yes, in my view, the foundation of science is the humility to learn instead of the arrogance of expertise. Very often we hear from practitioners of science. They tell us what they think is the truth, and they don't allow much room for any discussion about that. And that's unfortunate, because it takes away the excitement of the scientific process, where you don't know the answer in advance. You can make mistakes, but nature corrects you. But if you collect the evidence, eventually it guides you to the right answer. And it's work in progress. It's a learning experience. You have to be humble. You have to admit that you might make mistakes, because you don't know in advance what would be the answer. And I always give the example of Albert Einstein back in 1935 until 1940. He made three big mistakes. He argued that black holes don't exist, gravitational waves don't exist, and quantum mechanics doesn't have spooky action at a distance. And the experimental teams that proved him wrong received the Nobel Prize over the past decade. And so would you argue he did the wrong thing by writing papers on areas that, were highly uncertain, and he got it wrong 3 times in 5 years? That's pretty bad, a bad record. But on the other hand, he inspired others to test those ideas, and they ended up concluding that he was wrong. So that advanced our knowledge. That's why the Nobel Prize was given to those experimental teams. So we have to adopt a completely different attitude than showing off and in order to get honors, awards. Instead, just admit that we might be wrong sometimes, but we are trying to figure out the truth, and that's completely acceptable. And that means that science is a process by which we have some conjecture, we allow ideas that are not conventional outside the box, with the understanding that it would motivate us to collect data so we can check which idea is correct. And that is very often missed. For example, today I had an interview with a broadcasting company in England, and they quoted Brian Cox, who said 3I Atlas is a comet, period, basically suppressing any discussion about an alternative possibility. I said, he's just a commentator. He did not write a single scientific paper on 3I Atlas. So how does he know the answer? I wrote 11 scientific papers. It's very different when you are practicing science than when you're commenting on that, because you can argue that you are the authority, you will tell the public, but science is not about authority. And actually the public recognizes that. I get a lot of emails of people who are excited by the prospects of learning something new about 3I Atlas. It's an interstellar blind date, and we don't know who is the dating partner, and let's figure it out. And there are lots of kids who decided to become scientists after hearing me on television or on podcasts, and I see that as the biggest compliment I can get. But can Brian Cox argue that by ridiculing any alternative, he would inspire kids to become scientists? Probably not. And why is he adopting this approach? It's actually anti-scientific. If he disagrees with my interpretation, we can figure it out by collecting data, and he needs to explain why the data explains all the anomalies that we know about this object, so that it definitely is a comet. That's it. But instead, he's making statements. So that's one aspect of this, showing to the public that science is work in progress and that it could be exciting, like a detective story. And of course, the other side of it, we end up concluding that this is not a natural comet, but an artificial technological object. Then, of course, there would be huge implications for the future of humanity. So we cannot really dismiss the discussion, even if we assign a small probability for that alternative point of view, because it has huge implications to society.
Yes, absolutely. We admire your courage, unconventional thinking, and you're so inspiring. Professor Loeb, you've spoken to so many media, NBC, Joe Rogan recently, but today you're with us, a small independent channel with a Mandarin-speaking audience.
We're so surprised. We're thinking maybe like 5 or 6 emails later, we might got a response, but just one email and you respond right away. And here you are today. So we're not a big deal. Yeah, like Mark mentioned earlier, just 2 curious people like asking questions. So why did you say yes?
Because I do not have a hierarchy in my head of speaking with only people that I can benefit from. There used to be a plumber that came to fix a problem in the sewer at our home, and I just sat on the stairs with him and we spoke for an hour. He had questions, and I really treat each person, as long as I have the time, equally. And many of the most interesting insights were mentioned to me from people who are not professionals necessarily. The other thing I would say is that science fiction writers, the best among them, are much more imaginative than second-class scientists. So I would much rather listen to them. Because if there is something that we don't know, only imagination can bring us to that. If we fail to imagine things, then we would never seek them, we would never look for them. You know, the easiest example is imagining that we have a dating partner, someone that would partner with us. If we decide that there is nobody out there because we are lonely, we don't have a partner, and there is nobody out there, we would never take the action of seeking that partner, and it will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the same is true about science. If you don't imagine, for example, that there are Jupiter-mass planets next to stars like the sun, very close to them, you would never search for them. And indeed, until 1995, the astronomy community did not imagine that. They said, we understand why Jupiter is so far from the sun. There shouldn't be any such systems. And then one was discovered in 1995 by chance, and that was awarded the Nobel Prize. So if we tell ourselves that something doesn't exist, therefore we don't search for it, or we don't invest money or time in looking for it, we will never find it. And that's the situation now with extraterrestrial intelligence, because the mainstream of astronomy is willing to put more than $10 billion in the search for microbes, but nothing is recommended in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. And I find that to be the wrong approach, because if there is an intelligence out there, it's just like having a resident in our street. You might say most of the houses in the street have microbes. Yes, but it's very challenging to find their signature from a distance. On the other hand, if there is a resident in one of the houses on our street, then that resident may show up at our front door, or may throw a tennis ball that we would find in our backyard, or may have some construction project that we can see from a distance. So it might be much easier to find an intelligent neighbor than microbes. Nevertheless, the astronomy community is focused only on microbes. The way to understand that is that common sense is not common in academia.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's exactly why so many of our viewers admire you, because you represent a kind of courage, the courage to ask questions, to challenge the status quo.
Well, what do I have to lose? You know, we all live for a short amount of time. If we use all of our time just to make other people happy, we would never accomplish anything significant. We need to make people close to us happy. I mean, I need to make my wife happy, otherwise I would be miserable. But what I'm saying is we can't sabotage our passion just because other people are critical of this passion.
Yeah.
If I find this subject to make sense and to be a good focus for a scientific research program, then I would never give up on that just because other people are jealous of the attention that it gets, of the interest of the public, because those people do not have a constructive agenda. Why should I let them destroy something that I can imagine would bring humanity to a better place?
Yeah, totally. Let's talk about 3I Atlas. So everyone seems to say that it's a comet, maybe a strange one, but a natural object. But you kept the door open, right, to something more extraordinary. Also, some critics say your hypothesis is just a way to attract attention or get more research funding. How do you respond to that, and what makes you consider that extraordinary possibility?
Yeah, the reason I'm getting attention is because of these people that make me unique and special. If everyone was saying it's completely reasonable to consider this possibility because of the anomalies, I would not be noticed. So the only reason I'm noticed is because of these responses that, in my view, do not make any sense. Basically, we see about 10 anomalies of this object, 3I Atlas. And the first one that I recognized immediately as it was discovered is its size. It's bigger than 5 kilometers in diameter, and that makes it 1,000,000 times more massive than the first interstellar object, Oumuamua, that was discovered in 2017. And why would the third object be 1,000,000 times more massive than the first one? One would expect to find 1,000,000 small objects before finding a giant one, simply because there is a limited amount of mass available to make them. And in fact, there is not enough rocky material in interstellar space per unit volume to accommodate the delivery of such a giant rock 5 kilometers in diameter or more into the inner solar system every decade, because we monitor the sky just for 8 years by now and found this one to be the third object. So why would we be so fortunate? Based on the mass budget, we would expect once per 10,000 years or longer to find such a big rock. So that was the first puzzle that I noticed. And one possible solution is to say it has nothing to do with the reservoir of rocky material in interstellar space that is coming from planetary systems like the solar system. It may have been targeting the inner solar system by design. And in fact, the trajectory of this object is aligned with the plane of the planets around the sun to within 5 degrees. The planets themselves are not aligned better than a few degrees with that plan. So the question is whether this trajectory was designed by some intelligence so that it arrives for a reconnaissance mission, for example. And then it showed some additional anomalies. There was a jet pointing from the object towards the sun, where usually we see cometary tails that are being pushed away from the sun by the solar radiation and wind. And we also saw an unusual composition. Only 4% of the gas around it is water by mass. The rest is carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide. But even more paradoxically, there is evidence for a lot of nickel without much iron. And the only place where we see that, where nickel is separated from iron, is in industrial production of nickel alloys that are used for aerospace applications. So the question is whether that's a signature of technology. There was also a very unusual polarization of the object, which was negative, and it also came from the direction of the enigmatic WOW signal, the radio signal from 1977, whose origin is unknown. So the question is whether the two are related, because the chance of that alignment at random is 0.6%. And also it arrived to the inner solar system at a very special time that allows it to pass close to Mars, Venus, and Jupiter. So the question is, why is the timing so unusual? When it came closest to the sun, that was October 29th, a week ago, the Earth was on the opposite side of the sun, and perhaps that was for a reason that we weren't able to observe what it's doing. This is the optimal point for doing a maneuver for a spacecraft, for example. But we did notice a maneuver, actually. That could also be produced by outgassing, the evaporation of ice on the surface of the object from the side facing the sun, in which case it will get a recoil in the opposite direction. I calculated that it should have lost 10 to 20% of its mass last week, if that was the origin of its velocity kick. In that case, we should see a very massive cloud of gas, potentially dust, around it in the coming weeks as we observe it. Just a few days ago, the first images were taken of it after it passed close to the sun, and they don't show a cometary tail. They just show a fuzzy ball of light. Observations indicate that it became bluer than the sun when it came close to the sun, and that's surprising because it has a surface temperature that is 20 times smaller than the surface temperature of the sun. So usually red color is associated with cooler objects rather than blue. And the only way to interpret that is maybe there is some molecule like carbon monoxide that is emitting in the blue, or maybe there is an engine that is very hot. That's why we saw it as a blue color. And that's also the origin of the deviation from the path of an object with no propulsion that we saw, that there was non-gravitational acceleration. So maybe it's just a result of an engine. So the way for us to figure it out is to see in the coming weeks whether it has this large mass of gas cloud around it, more than 5 billion tons. And if we don't see that, then it would really be intriguing. But if we see that, then we know that it's most likely a comet, because we can also infer the composition of that material and check that it resembles icy rock that we expect.
We just actually did a new episode yesterday covering that it's turning blue, and also the non-gravitational acceleration. It sparked a lot of new kind of attention from our audiences.
Yeah. A couple of days ago, the Chinese Space Administration released images from Tianwen-1 when the object passed close to Mars on October 3rd. It was within 29 million kilometers. Unfortunately, the resolution is not very good, so because the camera was only 38 centimeters in diameter. So we can see the object as a few pixels in that animation that was prepared. The hope is that maybe NASA will release some data from the high-rise camera that looked at it around the same time, and we should see if it looks more informative. Representative Luna submitted a letter to the acting administrator of NASA, Sean Duffy, and there was no official response to that letter. He responded to a tweet by Kim Kardashian
Yeah, we saw that.
About 3i Atlas, and I was asked for my response, and I said Kim Kardashian is most welcome to join my research team, and the 65 million followers she has want to join my research team. I'll be glad to accommodate them as well, because she did show curiosity. And afterwards, Representative Luna met with officials from NASA, and she said the holdup is because of some bureaucratic reason, because of the government shutdown, and hopefully as soon as the shutdown will be over, we'll be able to see the images. So my hope is that next week we will have that.
Got it. So with all these new anomalies, do you still think it's a 4 in your Loeb scale?
Yeah, so I did not revise my ranking. 0 is a natural object, and 10 is a technological object that could be potential threat to humanity. And I did not revise my ranking just because I'm waiting in the coming weeks for the flood of data that we will get when the object is closer to Earth. And on December 19th, it will be closest. And we just need to hope that there will be no gifts delivered to Earth for the holidays out of this object. At that time, we will probably know much more about it because there will be hundreds of observatories around the globe monitoring it. The International Asteroid Warning Network will announce the campaign that will involve a lot of observatories. So that's my wish, to have as many telescopes looking at it so that we will be flooded with data. The one way to tell the difference between a genuine scientist and conspiracy theorist, to give both of them a lot of data, and the conspiracy theorist would be upset because it may go against their belief. But a genuine scientist would always be happy with more data, because even if it shows that the scientist is wrong, we learn something new. And it's always good to appreciate how nature could be more imaginative than we are. I argue that if we ever encounter alien technology, it would be far more imaginative than science fiction writers.
What if it's not natural at all? And if such a civilization is so advanced, they don't need to fear us, right? Why they should
I agree that the three-body problem, the books were quite impressive, but my expectation is that it would look very different than we imagine, because our own training data set is limited to what we encountered on Earth. We are just like large language models, like artificial intelligence, where our ability to imagine depends on the training data set that we have. But if there is something coming from another star, it would sample very different conditions potentially. And especially if it's as big as 5 kilometers, the size of a city, the kind of technologies needed to lift such a thing and power it go well beyond what we possess. Our biggest rocket is less than 100 meters. And here we're talking about the difference between the size of a football field and the size of a city. It's very different. Obviously, the learning that we need to go through in order to appreciate technologies that produce such a thing and power it and bring it to our backyard would be a lot for us to digest. It would take us a while to figure it out. On the other hand, if it's just a rock, it may be easier. So it depends on your perspective. I would hope that it's actually technological, because we desperately need a wake-up call that would make us more modest. Also will bring people together around the globe, because as of now we are engaged in conflicts all the time. That's because we look down on each other and try to win in conflicts that we establish on this rock. But if we had a visit from a neighbor, it might bring our family of humans together, because we are all in the same boat. The aliens don't care how we split the land on this planet. It would be foolish of us to continue to engage in these childish fights that we have. All humans should cooperate to defend the Earth and potentially learn from some higher intelligence out there.
Totally agree. In the podcast you had with Joe Rogan, amount of money spent every year in military budget, like compared to scientific research, especially for searching for extraterrestrial beings, we can split some of that, and human race will advance tremendously.
Yeah, it just shows you how misguided our priorities are. But this could be corrected if we encounter some alien technology. Then, of course, we might decide to allocate a significant fraction of our military budgets to a space defense system, where we have a warning system that alerts us to any incoming technological objects from outside the solar system. And that would imply maybe $1 trillion a year to space exploration. So it would be great for science to have that, and it would be great for space technologies. You can put together the best architects, the best scientists, policymakers to design those space components that we launch. And for example, I think it will encourage us to also explore interstellar space, and that would mean that we need to build a habitat that can accommodate people in space. And that is far more ambitious and visionary than going to Mars, which is just another rock like the Earth, even smaller, and right now has very little atmosphere and it's a desert. So why go to much worse circumstances? That doesn't make any sense to me. But that seems to be the most visionary priority of space agencies, going to Mars. I think if we have the ability to spend $1 trillion a year, we should build a platform that we can put in space that accommodates humans, and then it can go places. We don't need to limit it to the orbit of Mars around the sun. We can go out of the solar system, and of course, if we ever see such a spacecraft, it would mean that someone else already did that. So it would inspire us to do that.
Let's imagine that if 3i Atlas, by the way, I think it deserves a better name because 011 is such a cool name, right?
It depends how you think about this name, because you can think of it as some kind of a creature called Atlas that has 3 eyes.
That's funny. But let's say if it's really some advanced technology, right? What do you think it wants from us? Like, why does it come to our solar system?
Oh, that would be difficult to understand, because it's just like imagine ants in the crack of a pavement watching a biker that passes by. They would never be able to figure out the purpose of the biker. If you have a dog and one day you have to go and get some stamps from the post office, the dog will never be able to figure out what is the meaning of stamps. Why are you going there? So just think about another species that is far more advanced than we are, because they arrived at our backyard before we arrive at their backyard. And they are coming here for their own purposes, not related to us necessarily. I mean, we always think that it's about us. And that is, again, because we are self-centered. And we know that we are not at the center of the universe now. And I argue that we are also not at the intellectual center of the universe. There is probably a smarter kid on our block. And the point is that even if we get a visit by such a kid, it will not be because we are here. It will be for another reason, because humans arrived at Earth only a few million years ago. And that's one part in 1,000 of the history of Earth, for example. And whoever started the journey billions of years ago did not imagine that we are here, unless they parked close to the solar system and they monitored us. They put some monitors that watch us, and we transmit radio signals, and now we develop artificial intelligence, we have nuclear weapons. So maybe at some point they decide to come and visit us or monitor us more. Other than that, if they come from a large distance, they don't care about us. It's not about us. And so it's really hard to figure out what the intent is. And the best way to do that is by checking what they're doing. If they're coming to the inner solar system, are they deploying any probes that come close to planets, or they actually visiting planets? Who are they? And so all of this has to do with gathering information. And I think there should be, once this is understood, there should be an international organization on Earth that collects all the data, coordinates observations, and advises policymakers as to how to respond. And the response should come from the entirety of humanity. It shouldn't be done by a government, because it's a matter that affects all of us. And we don't want someone to do something that would damage all of us. If they rock the boat, then we might all die. So there needs to be some cooperation, and people who deviate from that cooperation would be punished, because it affects all of us. It's just like all of us are in the same boat, and we can sink together if we are not doing the right things. My hope is that there will be attention to this matter, but I'm not naive. I think it will happen as soon as we have clear evidence for a technological artifact that is visiting the solar system. And that requires collecting data and not assuming that everything coming into the solar system must be a comet or an asteroid. On January 2nd this year, there was a near-Earth asteroid that was catalogued by the Minor Planet Center, and it was catalogued as an asteroid until they realized that it moves along the path of the Tesla Roadster car that SpaceX launched in 2018. And obviously, they thought it's a rock, but it's actually a car. And astronomers will always say that an object is either an asteroid or a comet because that's their vocabulary, that's what they're used to. We shouldn't take it too seriously because, once again, their training data set is quite limited. So even if they say confidently that it's a comet or an asteroid, we should check if there are anomalies, if there are some pieces of evidence that might be suspicious.
Yeah, and earlier you mentioned a little bit about three-body problem. Actually, that's a very popular book, and I love the writer, Liu Cixin. People first encountered the idea of interstellar civilization through his book.
Yeah,
and
it's an excellent book.
Yeah, it is. I love it. And he popularized the idea of dark forest hypothesis,
Yes.
right? That intelligent civilizations might stay silent to survive because the universe could be a very dangerous place.
Yeah.
Do you think that's how it really works? Could silence be a surviving strategy even for advanced civilizations?
Yeah, that's actually a very reasonable idea, that there are aliens not far from us and they are worried about predators so they don't make a sound. It's as if they're in a dark forest. And when they notice us making a lot of sounds, we are not careful, then they check whether we pose a threat to them, and maybe they will visit us as a result. And we mentioned the dark forest hypothesis in the scientific paper that we published about the 3I Atlas. It might be a technological artifact. And I actually was contacted by the agent of the writer, Xing Lu, and I was consulted also by Netflix when they decided to make a series out of it. And I told them that it's an excellent write-up and they should do that. And so they did. So altogether, it's good in expanding our imagination. But my point is that nature might be far more imaginative than we are.
Exactly. I know that you've been fascinated about philosophy since you're a child. If we discover another civilization, let's say, how might that change our religion, our faith, and our beliefs?
Yeah, the most important message it will give us is that we are not unique and special, that things like us existed for billions of years, maybe in the Milky Way galaxy. Most of the stars are billions of years older than the sun, and there are billions of Earth-Sun analogs in the Milky Way galaxy. So it wouldn't be surprising if other things like us existed for a long time and they just sent out perhaps spacecraft or monuments that would preserve their legacy and perhaps testify that they existed. And we might find those. We just don't know how much traffic there is of functional devices that may arrive into the solar system. So that's why we should watch out. And I think it's very likely there were things more advanced than we are, because when you watch the news every day, it's obvious that there is a lot of room for improvement in the way we behave. We are probably in the middle of our class of intelligent civilizations. There is a lot for us to hope for, and the main goal of mine is that to convince the scientific community to invest the funds and the time in searching for extraterrestrial intelligence, not just for microbes.
Yeah, that's true. Earlier you also mentioned Tianwen, right? Like now China's space program has been growing rapidly. Missions like Tianwen, Chang'e, and Quetiao are now exploring Mars and the far side of the moon. How do you see China's role in the future of space exploration? And do you think global cooperation rather than competition is truly possible in this new space age?
Well, I hope so. Obviously, close to Earth, there are national security aspects to exploring space. I mean, different nations put satellites that spy on each other. But as we go away from Earth, the national divide is less important, because if we go to a very distant object, it doesn't have a direct impact on life on Earth. That means that cooperation is very much appropriate. If we were to decide to go out of the solar system, then all humans should come together. There is no direct impact on Earth. And my point is, as the farther we go away from Earth, the more cooperation we should have, because it has less national security implications. But what prevents that right now is national pride. So different nations want to be the first to do this or that. But I do think that in the long term, especially if we have a visitor from outside the solar system, and it would convince us that we are all members of the same family, humans. And with respect to the religious implications. I had a group of religious scholars that came to visit me, and they asked me, how would it affect our religious beliefs if we find extraterrestrials? And I told them that I have two daughters, and when the second one was born, it didn't take away any of the love that I have to the first one. And therefore, thinking that God can attend only to one civilization, us, is very limiting. It's like a parent that is incapable of attending to more than one child, which is just thinking that God is really limited. So I don't think it should have an impact. In fact, it would mean that these other civilizations are our siblings. And the only thing that can happen is that we will be jealous of their accomplishments that are better than ours, just like jealousy between siblings. But otherwise, I think it will just make us feel more connected to the universe, to the cosmos, because it's just like finding lost members of your family. And you realize that the universe is not a lonely place. It's not made just of lifeless objects, the way that cosmologists are thinking about it right now. We will feel a connection. There are intelligent beings out there. Maybe we can learn from them. Maybe they can teach us because they were around for much longer than we did. Maybe we can imitate them because they are much more accomplished than we are. And as Oscar Wilde said, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So to give them a compliment, we might want to imitate them.
Professor, you often say that science isn't just about certainty, it's about curiosity. Right. So as humans standing in front of this vast unknown, what's the meaning of life for regular people?
Yeah, so for me, the meaning is understanding the cosmic scene. In other words, we are born into this play. We are not at the center of stage. We learn that Earth is moving around the sun rather than the other way around. And we also arrived relatively late, only over the past few million years, which is one part in 10,000 of the age of the universe. So if you arrive late to a play and you are not at the center of stage, the play is not about you. And that's what we fail to recognize. We always think that it's about us. Once we realize the play is not about us, we seek other actors on that stage. They may be able to tell us what the play is about. And that would give us a meaning to our life. Finding a partner in the cosmos, another intelligent species, would give us meaning, just like when you find a partner in your personal life, it gives you a new meaning to your existence. And that's the meaning that I can imagine for humans in the future, that we will be connected to the cosmos. We'll decide to explore it by embarking on a space platform that all of us built together, sort of like Noah's Ark from the biblical story of Noah that saved the animals by building an ark, and we can call it Noah's spaceship, and then work together and survive as the human species, because the Earth, one way or another, will lose its habitability eventually. Within 1 billion years, the sun will brighten and will evaporate, vaporize all the oceans, lakes, rivers, all the liquid water on the surface of the Earth by a greenhouse effect. And so we don't have a lot to wait for, and we should find a way of going elsewhere so we preserve some of us in the long-term future. And the point is, if we perish on this planet, there will be no obituary. Nobody would mourn the fact that we disappeared. As much as we want to feel important in the cosmic scheme of things, we are not. And the only way for us to be remembered in the history books of the Milky Way galaxy, when some AI system writes it, let's say billions of years from now, is if we move into interstellar space. We leave our planet and actually leave some monuments out there that we can be proud of, that will keep our legacy alive.
I really like your view towards the interstellar beings, because most of the novels describe they're here to destroy us, right? Or they don't care us like ants. They just maybe cross by, they destroy by accident. But I really like how you view them as a partner, or possibly can give us new meaning of life.
Yeah, because I think the aggressive among them might engage in a lot of conflicts, and they get destroyed eventually by that. So there is a question of what constitutes natural selection in interstellar space, and Darwinian selection. And I would imagine that being kind and generous is a virtue, because you don't get engaged in conflicts all the time. You don't get bruised. You don't get killed by predators. And that's wishful thinking, of course. But many times it's good to have a positive outlook, to be an optimist, because life is sometimes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you imagine something better, it might actually happen.
Yeah, the power of attraction. Yeah. Many of our young viewers say they want to study astronomy because of you. If someone wants to follow your path, where should they begin?
Oh, in undergraduate studies of astronomy at the university, and then make in the academic ladder to become scientists. There is a clear path, and almost every university has an astronomy or physics department where you can pursue that. And my advice is stay curious and keep up your passion, because it's an amazing job that I have where people pay me to follow my curiosity. I mean, how many such jobs exist? And of course, you can get paid much more in the industry, the commercial sector, but it's not as satisfying as following your curiosity, figuring out things about nature. It's really a lot of fun to be a scientist, and maybe one of your viewers will be the one to discover what our cosmic neighborhood has in terms of neighbors. But also there are lots of other puzzles, like what is most of the matter in the universe? It's called dark matter because we don't know what it is. And what is most of the energy in the universe? It's called dark energy because we don't know what it is. What happened before the Big Bang? We don't know because we don't have a quantum theory of gravity. Or what happens inside a black hole? Again, we don't know. There are lots of unsolved problems. These are the known unknowns, but there are also unknown unknowns. I hope the next generation of scientists will resolve many of these. And that's one reason I would love to actually live forever, because this way I can address the infinite number of questions that I have about the universe. And it's just a lot of fun to figure things out.
That's some great advice. Thank you, Professor.
Okay, finally, Professor Loeb, do you have any message for our audience around the world, the people who are watching this interview right now?
Yeah, my advice is stay curious and never pretend to be the adult in the room, because, that's the fun of living, learning new things, making mistakes sometimes. It's just like a kid, learns about the world. And throughout my career, I try to maintain my childhood curiosity. And people who knew me as a kid say that I haven't changed. It's a privilege to be able to maintain your childhood approach, and I'm grateful to the opportunity that I was given being a scientist at the university. That's amazing that I can follow my curiosity and get paid for that. So my only issue is that, I have a limited amount of time left. And that's why I'm trying to do my best to learn the answer to the most important question: are we alone? So my hope is maybe AI-assisted medicine will make us live longer, so that would allow me to actually solve this problem.
Thank you so much, Professor Loeb. We appreciate your time and for your fearless curiosity. What you are doing is more than just science. It's a reminder that curiosity itself is what makes us human.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Loeb.
Thanks for the excellent questions. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, and if Stuart Atlas turned out to be a spaceship, please save us 2 seats.
Yes, I will be glad to come with you again and explain what we know. Some people said, oh, he's just interested in getting the Nobel Prize. And I said, I would, not waste my time in wearing a tuxedo and going to Stockholm when I can learn more about our cosmic neighbors. That is far more exciting.
That's why people admire you. We will send you the edited version before the release. Just make sure that everything is represented.
Don't worry about it. I trust you. There is nothing I regret. So you can just process it and make it public as soon as you want.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you so much. Really enjoyed talking to you.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.